So many games to play and never enough time, and often money too, am I right? I haven't made a video in a minute because I have been taking care of a baby, specifically my baby. And boy, it's hard to write and brainstorm when my daughter doesn't seem to nap for more than 10 minutes at a time. All worth it, of course, or at least that's what I've been telling myself at 4 a.m. to help me make it through the night. In all seriousness, it has been a rewarding experience already, kind of reminding me of leveling up Pokemon and teaching it new moves. One of the most interesting aspects of being a new parent is time. In a lot of ways, I feel I have no free time, yet there are countless moments throughout the day where I feel bored with nothing to do, and that's where games come in. I haven't made any formal reviews, but wanted to catch up and talk about a few new and newish games I've been playing recently. The first game I want to talk about today is Donkey Kong Bananza. Growing up, I had a GameCube, a GBA, a DS, and a Wii, so by default I identified myself as a Nintendo kid, even though I was always a little jealous of my friends with the latest PlayStation and Xbox. But when I look back at all the series I've missed out on, I realize I was actually more of a Mario kid than a Nintendo kid. And so as an adult, I've been trying to catch up on many franchises I'm just not that familiar with, which includes Donkey Kong. Throwing DK into a 3D collectathon platformer made by the Mario Odyssey team seemed to be a match made in heaven. Add that with the over-the-top destructibility and sign me up. Destroying stuff in DK Bananza is surprisingly fun and satisfying, even though I feel like a complete jerk when destroying some poor rock person's home, just to feed DK's Cookie Monster-like addiction to bananas, always looking for the next fix. Unsurprisingly, considering who the developers are, Donkey Kong Bananza captures much of the same feelings of adventure as Mario Odyssey, while also making you feel smart, coming up with your own solutions similar to The Legend of Zelda, specifically Tears of the Kingdom. Certain bananas throughout the open layers or in the challenge sections have a clear-cut solution to obtain, but many of them also allowed for some creative solutions, which for me often meant over-engineering some sort of solution that ended up being way more time-consuming. I wasn't sure how long the novelty of destruction would last, but the game does a great job of introducing new materials and new ways in which they interact with different environments. One aspect of Bananza I was a little let down by was the power-ups. Many of the concepts were interesting, but in application they often felt more like a tool for a specific task. Some of them are better than others, but several of them didn't really feel like they were adding anything in the form of complexity or depth to the gameplay. Not bad, just not all that additive. I've heard many complain about the camera in DK Bananza, which didn't really bother me, but what did bother me at times was DK's movement. Being more brutish, Donkey Kong lacks agility and precision, which leads to some awkwardness and motion. But luckily, there isn't too many sections that rely on Mario-like athleticism, so it's not totally bad, but I just feel like there's a little bit of awkwardness on the movement side sometimes. It's nice to see Nintendo invest a bit more on the narrative side, even if it is still story light, but when mixed in with the fantastic music, you might actually feel something. Overall, I thought Donkey Kong Bananza was fun to play through with no shortage of content or ideas. I've also been playing Assassin's Creed Shadows, and this is the one game I'm going to be talking about today that I haven't finished. It's been the game that I keep returning back to when I don't have anything to do between other games. There's a lot to admire here, but there's also a lot to dislike or at least scratch your head at. I've yet to get really far into the narrative, but the premise is interesting to me. Similar to Ghost of Yotei coming out here shortly, the premise of my family was killed by a gang, I'm going to take them all out one by one is always going to have a basic level of intrigue for me, but it comes down to the execution. Too early to tell yet, but so far it seems like there's a lack of significance to each target. I've spent a lot of time getting to the point where I can take them out, but I haven't really felt like I've gotten to know or understand what makes them individually so fierce. There's a decent amount of narrative variety in what you're doing, but as a whole the story kind of feels like 90s anime filler pacing. The map is big and feels like a realistic rendition of 16th century Japan. I'm not sure if this is a design choice to funnel players in certain directions or if it's just the result of being too realistic, but for how big of an open world this massive map is, it feels strangely linear and small. So I thought that was a bit interesting compared to a lot of other open world games out there. Like every Assassin's Creed game ever, there is stealth and combat. Combat has been a bit of a letdown for me so far. Naoe is pretty weak in hand-to-hand combat, and so you feel discouraged from using her in a fight. This is by design, and in contrast, Yasuke has power and presence, but even with him it often feels like I'm just brute forcing my way to victory versus winning a duel of skill. Combat just doesn't build up its momentum or flow. From the way you attack and the timing of which you're getting attacked, there feels like there's a counter to the flow state that you get in other samurai combat systems. Fortunately, stealth is better, but even with that, Yasuke is left as the odd man out since he can't really do much. Parkour and stealth as Naoe is probably the best aspect of the gameplay so far. I do genuinely feel like a ninja when rolling around in the shadows. At this point I was hoping to have finished Assassin's Creed Shadows before Ghost of Yotei came out, but at this rate I'll probably just have to juggle both games or finish one after the other. I have to admit I'm not really a big fan of the Assassin's Creed series, so keep my criticism with that in mind, but if you're a fan of the series, I'd be curious to hear what your thoughts are on this particular title. Like many, the reveal of Sword of the Sea reminded me instantly of the game Journey. With the same developer that was in charge of art direction for Journey now head of his own studio with the same composer at the music helm, it makes sense to draw some comparisons. The art direction of Matt Nava and the music of Austin Wintory is an emotionally powerful mix for sure. Sword of the Sea feels very Journey-like early on, but as you get further in and explore new biomes, it does start to feel more distinct. Like many of these types of games, Sword of the Sea has a healing and restoration of the land style of gameplay loop. Like Journey, each location feels like it has a lot of atmosphere and history to it. Unlike previous games from this studio, Giant Squid, or That Game Company, there's a cool and visually interesting transition of materials that's at play. Sand moves like waves out at the sea. Dry desert eventually transitions to tranquil ocean as we get further and further in each section. Unlike Journey, but more inclined with Giant Squid's other titles, is the emphasis on movement. You glide across surfaces in a way that blends surfing, snowboarding, and skating. The feeling of motion in this game is incredibly satisfying and almost zen-like, similar to swinging around in Marvel Spider-Man. The gameplay might look more like a Tony Hawk, but there isn't the same goal of hitting tricks or getting high scores, and so I feel Spider-Man's the best comparison here since it's all about finding that zen while moving. There's a story here with some universal themes and concepts that didn't quite move me emotionally as much as Journey, but putting the comparisons aside, or at least minimizing them, Sword of the Sea does have a sweet story in its own right. This is a short 2 to 3 hour experience, but that feels just right for this kind of a game where, similar to a movie, it's very rich on the sensations. I'm not sure where Sword of the Sea will rank by the end of the year, but it's definitely been one of my favorite experiences so far. The last game I'll mention today is Metal Gear Solid 3 Delta Snake Eater. I remember watching my brother play Metal Gear Solid on the PS1 back in the day, but I never got around to trying the series myself. It's always been on my backlog, but never really found the right time or the right game to get into it. As annoying as it is to get what feels like more remasters and remakes than actual new entries to franchises, they are great opportunities for people like myself to finally jump on in. I don't say this proudly, but I am one of those people who do get a little deterred by the age of a game, especially if it's from a series that I haven't tried before. So for me, this remake is the perfect opportunity to give the series a shot. The intro cutscene is cool and exciting. You feel like cool stuff's about to happen. A couple hours in, and my initial reaction to gameplay was that of disappointment. Level designs are surprisingly simple and somewhat annoying due to feeling like the real battle is with the controls themselves. For some reason, I had this impression that Snake had a similar demeanor to Batman, but he actually feels a lot more awkward than charming, more brash than calculated, and at many times out of his depth. Cutscenes often feel dragged on for ridiculous amounts of time. The world presents as fairly grounded, which feels at odds with the almost gag-like manga characters. With all those negative things said, the more I played the game, the more it grew on me for some funny reason. The further I got, the more I got into the over-the-top and goofy execution of serious ideas. The more time I've spent in this world, the more I started to understand why fans like Naked Snake. On the gameplay front, I started to enjoy myself a bit more once I realized in certain moments pulling out an AK-47 was a totally valid approach. Metal Gear Solid 3 is a very immersive game, especially for the era that it came out, with its use of camouflage, medical attention, and gadgets. By the end of the game, it did succeed at making me feel like Naked Snake fighting with and against the jungle. As a remake, it's not that great of a product when you look at the price tag, inconsistent visuals, and gameplay that feels like it could still use a tad bit more TLC. But if it goes on sale, it might not be a bad pickup if you're new to the series and go in with an open mind. What games have you been playing, and what games still to come out are you looking forward to during the rest of this year? Personally, October has me torn on where I'm going to spend all my time and money with a few heavy hitters. I plan to have a Ghost of Yotei review up at some point, so keep an eye out for that if you're interested. As always, I appreciate you for watching, and until next time, see ya.